I'm TD.
And I'm MPAG.
And we're here to save the day with the brand new Versus podcast. Normally on a Friday.
I thought you said Wednesday.
Music news, who beat who, and everything in between. So cast your words aside, make sure you're sitting comfortably. We're here to make you laugh, probably till you cry.
Dude, we can't make
but
you
rest
cry.
assured, there's a reason it's TD and MPAG time.
Listener, congratulations. You have made it to the official halfway point of season 1 of the Versus podcast with MPAG and TD.
Wowzers,
We've done it.
Unreal.
We've done it.
Unreal.
Halfway.
Who'd have thought that, a few weeks ago when we were sat discussing this crazy idea, we'd have had such a serious and intellectual set of conversations resulting in some very educational and definitely not completely fucking stupid content being put on the internet. Madness, right? Unreal.
It's unreal, man. I mean, to be fair, I like to make a lot of analogies. Currently, then, episode 5, we're about halfway. If this was Wacky Races, Dick Dastardly and Muscly are about to come and try and fuck us up royally with some sort of contraption. So, maybe today's guest's going to try and come at me with something. I don't know. I've got a sneaky suspicion he might, but we shall see. But yeah, I mean, I guess maybe we take the time to say, like, if you're listening to this and you've been listening to the podcast, well thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for sticking with us and enjoying it. Every little message and stuff that we've received on our social media platforms and our personal inboxes and things has been really awesome, and it's just nice to see that people are finding some kind of use, joy, or other emotion from what we've been doing, really, especially at this weird spooky ass time to be on the planet. It's
I mean, if someone
cool.
said to me, TD, you and MPAG are going to create the audible version of toilet paper in form of a podcast, like, I'd have said, you know what, I'll give it a good go. And here we are. We've done it.
Toilet paper is quite
it's a necessity in these days. You see where I was going with that?
Quite important at the moment, and it seems to be something that people are quite keen to get their hands on, so I'll take that for sure.
We are the shit paper of the audio industry right now.
Speaking of shit paper, I mean, there's some rumours knocking about that maybe we might be about to come out of
prison.
To come out of prison, at least in some respect. Obviously, it's Back to the Future. It's Bank Holiday Friday at the time that this goes out, isn't it? And
that threw me because it's not normally a Friday, this one either. It's normally a Monday.
No, but this is the thing that made me with the announcement thing. As soon as they said the announcement was coming on Sunday, instead it's usually Thursday that he does it, isn't it? But it's going on Sunday. Straight away, my brain sort of said, well, something's happening here, because otherwise, if he said it on Thursday and he was like, oh, lockdown is loosened somewhat, even if that's a case of you're allowed to go out for 2 hours instead of an hour on a bank holiday weekend, it would just be carnage, wouldn't it?
Did you see that episode of South Park where they do the whole Black Friday thing? That'll be McDonald's car park.
I mean, the difficulty is I don't want to get too political, but like obviously with the difficulty with this stuff at the moment is that it's whatever happens, there's going to be people that aren't adhering to the rules right now, and unfortunately there's nothing that we could do about that unless there is a concrete legality to it, almost, where it's like, if you go out of your house, fam, you is gonna get fucked. Unless that happens, this is the reality of the situation. So whatever happens is there's going to be a level of people aren't going to follow the rules, people aren't going to do this, that, and the other. But the thing that's really kind of bugged me about it is that, the death toll is high, and there's lots of things about, where the statistics are coming from, how they compare to other people and everything else. But the death toll is high, and it's currently, from the information we've been given, the highest in Europe. So when I looked at the newspapers this morning, and all it had on the front cover was, there is a very good chance that lockdown is going to be lifted on Monday, and it was being celebrated like it was some kind of fucking, end of a world war or some bullshit. And next to that, the fact that Adele is now skinny, which, fucking fair play, Adele, because it's mental. But those are the two things that everyone's talking about. And right at the bottom, it's just like, also everyone's dead.
Oh my
and I'm just
God.
like, fuck me. Like, what the fuck is wrong with people, man? Like, seriously. Like I said, I don't want to get too political about it, but like, if you're sat at home and you are thinking that, you know, even if lockdown is lifted and stuff like that and whatever else, it's like, please, for the love of fuck, be sensible. Like, I know that sounds fucking mental coming out of my mouth on this podcast, but for Christ's sake, be sensible out there, because yes, you know, there's lots of things, people haven't seen their families, there's loads of stuff going on, but at the end of the day, this is a fucking pandemic. This is not going to be all roses, and if you go out and be a dick, it's going to get worse. So you heard it from me. I know, I mean, other people might not beat around the bush, or might beat around the bush a little more than I do, but
I mean, I'm going to give MPAG the award for the most political, non-political statement this side of the 21st century.
I mean, just don't be a twat. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, just don't be a twat.
Right, well,
let's leave that there, because I don't want to talk about that too long.
That, you know, if we're let out of prison, that's great. If we're not let out of prison, there's probably a reason for it. So there you have it. You have the long and the short of it right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Moving away from that.
Quickly, please.
How's your week been, dude?
I mean, yeah, the thing is, this is the irony of the whole thing. It's like, I have probably had my worst week in lockdown, and probably my worst week in a while. You know, I've always been quite open about the way that I feel about stuff, and I've always been quite sort of, you know, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that's kind of the way that I am.
Fucking hell, this is, I mean, I wish I'd never asked.
No, I'm just saying, like, it's just one of those things. But this is what I'm saying. It all kind of boils back to the same thing. It's like, you know, there's lots of things, as you know, members of my family that I haven't seen for a long time. Obviously, I've not been able to do anything with my band, and all of the things that I do, I haven't been able to go to work. All of the things that sort of usually take my mind off stuff that have been going on.
I get what you're saying, dude.
And that's the thing, is that that's a very common thing at the moment. And I do get that that's why, you know, some of the lockdown stuff might be being lifted, because, you know, you don't want to be in a situation where no one's got coronavirus, but everybody is sad as fuck, and then you've got, you know, massive implications elsewhere, which I do get. But yeah, my week has fucking sucked, but I just think it's like, I want to use that as a positive to kind of go, it's all right to talk about that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to sit here and go on about that. I just think it's got to be addressed.
Oh, dude, no, it is. As much as I'm like, oh no, don't want to hear about a sad time MPAG, because that makes me sad because my friend's sad. Obviously, you know, bro's got backs, but
yeah,
you know, at the end of the day, I think everyone's kind of going through the same stuff. Everyone's
exactly, man. That's exactly it. I mean, you know, I'm not for a second suggesting I'm the only person going through it. And if you are going through it, just fucking talk to someone, man. It's like, you can talk to, obviously, us, talk to your friends, talk to, you know, there's various organisations available and, you know, set up out there. I mean, I will
just interject there and say that to talk to me about it, you do need to subscribe to the premium TD friendship package for $17.95 a month. You do get a mug, and you get bi-monthly photo updates of me counting pound coins that I have stashed in the jar. But I'd say it's worth it. I'd say it's a good investment, dude, to be fair.
Dude, I mean, I'm just gutted I didn't get a mug. Is that a new upgrade since I joined?
Well, dude, you're only on gold package.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, damn.
Yeah, you're only paying the $12.95 subscription. And in all honesty, fam, you've missed a payment, so you're still here at the moment.
Shit,
so.
Sorry, I'm in my overdraft, man. Furlough, innit?
Well, that's it. You know, the podcast does not pay well, children.
No.
The podcast does not pay well.
Yes. Yeah, maybe. I mean, what about you, man? How's your week been going? Better than mine, I hope.
The highlight of my week, I got a new chair for my desk.
I don't even have a chair.
I mean, you're currently. I mean, we laughed about this earlier, but you're currently sat on a practice amp with a cushion.
I am. Yeah. It's literally, you know, like the story of our lives, right there. It's like, I've got something that functions in the same way, just not quite as well. Like,
I mean, that is a cruel analogy to yourself there.
Dude.
But you know how much I love a self-burn. So no, I bought a new chair. Wasn't expecting to have to have graduated from Harvard to put it together, to be completely honest. I mean, imagine if it was like a Meccano set, but instead of being like a fully fledged human adult, I was a packet of Bisto gravy. That's how I felt trying to read the instructions. Like, I was a sentient packet of gravy. And this was like a child's Meccano set. So, you know, there was words said to the chair. The chair and I are now acquainted. We are now friends. But it was not a pleasant start to the friendship.
I mean, let's talk about the chair for a second. What are we talking with regards to chair?
We're talking like a Nitro 300, you know, lumbar support, raisable armrests. attachable neck pillow, fully fledged. I work from home now, so I needed a comfy chair to do this sort of stuff with. So it's a real chair, man. It's not like I've gone down PC World and been like, give me one of those finest, like the ones you have at school. I've gone fully fledged. All those friendship subscriptions are finally paying off. Man. Proper chair.
Yeah, what's the padding like? Tell me what the padding's like.
I'm slightly concerned what you're doing with yourself currently.
Oh my god! Yeah, no, keep going. Don't stop, man. Don't stop.
This is getting so weird.
I mean,
it's a comfortable chair.
I'm getting a little bit too excited about the fact that you have armrests. To be honest, because I don't know if you've ever seen a standard practice amp, but they do not come equipped with.
What brand of practice amp is it?
Do you know what? It's a Vox. That's how, which you can imagine. Is not something I've used.
I bet when you're playing those drop B breakdowns, mate, it sounds lovely through that twang machine.
Well, the thing is, I don't really use a practice amp ever because these days, this is something that I've had for a long time, and it's just been stashed in my house. Hence why it's now become more of a stool than a practice amp because Yeah, I mean, obviously, I use like my digi-rig most of the time, or something just through the computer when I'm tracking now. So it's like, this is
that makes sense. I'm the same, yeah.
An old timer thing. And it was just something that I had in the house. And
why don't you love me anymore, MPAG?
It is. I mean, it was a bit like that. That penguin in Toy Story that gets brought out of the cupboard and is squeak as fucked. It was a bit like that because I got it out at the beginning of lockdown to just play guitar for fun, which is something that I haven't done for a long time, and I did it. I played in like standard tuning on like a guitar that's not my guitar sort of thing, and and it was great. But instead of the happy ending of singing karaoke at the end of the fucking movie, I just turned it into a seat because it fucking was shit, basically. So moral of the story is, it's like it doesn't all end in roses, I'm afraid, and you don't always get your squeaker replaced.
Well, I mean, maybe at that point. Hopefully we've opened the can of worms. Let's empty out all the negativity that we've had for the first 10 minutes of this podcast.
I'm so sorry, man.
Everybody.
I'm so sorry.
There you go. This is like that other week where we asked you about a van, expecting you to be like, yeah, it broke down once, and we got the whole life story. Christ.
Yeah, except this time it wasn't the van that broke down. It was just MPAG.
Well, MPAG, much like Red Beast. I hope you're on the road again, fam. Rocking and rolling down the M27.
Dude, hey, I'm always all right. It's all going to be cool. I mean, I've got a feeling that the next hour or so is definitely going to raise my spirits somewhat, and hopefully for everybody at home also.
Well, I think so. So, let's do it. So, what have we got? Tell me what we got.
Cool. So, I'm super gassed. We are very, very lucky this week to be welcoming in somebody who started off as a colleague, I suppose you would say, in a weird way, and I'm very lucky to be able to call him a very good friend of mine now. I've twisted his arm into coming on and joining us on the podcast. So yeah, we've got Craggs from Hidden Track Studios and Feed the Rhino fame. So Oz, how you doing, bud?
Yeah, very well, thank you, mate. Very well. How are you boys doing? You surviving isolation, all right?
I mean, I no longer know what the outside world looks like, mate. I feel like I'm trapped inside the TARDIS.
Oh, mate, it's a weird time. I actually had to go out today and ventured into town to get something.
Did you go shopping?
Yeah, I had to go and pick something up, and I had to walk through the town. And Jesus, it was it's like a fucking zombie film. Honestly, it's a weird world.
I just had to clarify, as it's becoming a bit of a thing now, that you weren't going to Asda, were you?
Oh, here we go.
Well,
here we go, buddy. 4 episodes in the fucking making, my friend. You're about to get your ass on a plate. Here we go.
See, the thing is, Toby. Obviously, we've never spoken before, and I've checked your band out. Seems cool. I listened to a few of the podcasts. Seemed like a nice guy, but I think you've been doing a big disservice to the people of the UK, and I think now is the time to set the record straight. I think it's time for you to.
Are you coming at me with
time.
Asda?
Listen, man.
Am I about to get?
Listen, man,
are you about to give me the Asda price?
I tell you what. Not only is Asda a good supermarket, I'm going to say the best supermarket, the superior supermarket.
You are throwing hands, my friend.
Listen, dude.
You are throwing hands.
We're not in M&S world anymore, man. We're talking custom pizza shop stands. We're talking the biggest vegetarian range out of any of them. Mate, there's no comparison. I mean, you may have got away with it for 4 episodes, but not today.
You come here You come here to my doorstep and you bring me this Asda price bullshit. Like, oh, we've got good vegetarian options. It doesn't matter that their fucking bread is made out of sandpaper. Like, come on now, it's the fundamentals.
Listen, the range of bread though. Let's just talk about the range of bread. Do you know what I mean? Fresh bakery. I mean, listen, I think I'm spoilt because there is like a superstore right near where I work, so that's probably where I'm getting this from. But listen, anything you could possibly dream. It's basically like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory of British supermarkets. I don't know where you've been shopping. I mean, three aisles in the back of a petrol station at M&S is just no comparison, mate. You're living in a fantasy world. You know, you really are.
I mean, I honestly don't even know what to say here. Like, I feel like someone's literally come on in, it's like literally broken into my house, like come at me with a knife, tried to stab me. But it has failed to pierce the skin because it's made from poor quality Asda material. So.
No, what it is, mate, is that
I'm unscathed.
you come out of it because
live
it's
in that fantasy world. It's fine.
It's a knife from a standard UK rider, my friend.
Plastic.
i.e.
Well,
there
you're
isn't
lucky.
one.
You're lucky you've got one at all.
That's true. I mean, I'll tell you what, Oz, I don't want us to get off on the wrong foot here, so we will agree to disagree that Asda is the worst supermarket in the UK. Hashtag fuck Asda continues.
I'm amazed that I managed to get through 3 separate interviews with people that we have had on this podcast without you noticing that I am also a fan of Asda. I just stayed quiet the entire time. You just ragged on Asda for 3 episodes.
They all wear green as well. They're so jolly, the outfit. Even just going on the outfits, it's so jolly.
They're not fucking elves, mate. It's not fucking Lapland. Like you don't,
well, it is
I'm not
when
going
I go
there to
shopping.
sit on Santa's lap, mate. I'm going there to get some food, and at that, you know, it's questionable.
Well, we clearly have very different taste in shopping experiences.
Well, I mean, it's not going to matter after this because now I found out Mikey likes Asda. This is the last episode anyway. So,
dude, I mean,
I hope you've enjoyed the Versus podcast. TD out.
The Versus podcast with MPAG on his own. Dude, I mean, I just feel like you've been giving Asda a bit of a hard time. I mean, we eat Asda all the time when we're in the studio. So like, and it's, you know, I feel like we've had a wonderful time. They do this chicken and bacon wrap, which is just like, oh.
You say rat, sorry.
No, I didn't say rat, thank you. Let's play fair.
That's the premium range.
It's wonderful stuff.
Right, we're down the rabbit hole already. We've got to escape.
That's it. We have gone down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we're gassed to have you here. So thank you very much.
I was until I found out he was a hashtag Asda pricer. But yeah, I guess it's all right. We ain't got no one else, Oz, so, you know, fucking enjoy.
Wow, brutal. Look at what you've done.
Oh, it's all right. I got all the love, really. You made some cool records, dude.
Thank you very much.
I saw your band once, and I thought I was going to get mugged, so it was cool.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Whereabouts was that? Do you remember where it was? Or?
It was at Butserfest, and like the vocalist was like an angry football hooligan. It was fucking awesome, but I was like literally like, am I about to be assaulted? Probably, but it was good fun. It was good
nice
fun,
man. Yeah. I got lots of fun memories of 10 years of pretty wild touring and festival stories and stuff. So yeah, it was a really cool experience and got to do some cool stuff. And definitely had a bit of a reputation of being a bit of a loaded cannon as a band, which was quite funny because I'm probably the most...
But it was definitely awesome to watch though, because I mean, I think I saw Rhino 2 or 3 times in the expanse of time that they were a band.
Yeah.
And every time I saw them, like you could never say it was a boring watch. It was almost like firework night. You kind of didn't know, you know, you look at the Catherine wheel on the rock and you're like, it's not spinning yet. It's someone going over to check it. Don't fucking go because it's coming. You know what I mean? Like it was intense.
Yeah, it was good fun, man. And like, you know, we're all still really good friends. We all still talk every day, I think, pretty much.
That's really good.
It was. I think we all just kind of came to it from like this place of like all been in bands before and kind of had some level of success with being in bands before and kind of all like to perform a certain way as well. So it just kind of was a really synergistic kind of all clicked together at the same time thing. And I don't think we ever really particularly planned or discussed to have a certain kind of live show. It just kind of happened really like that. And
it's better when it's more natural though, I think, rather than like, you know, the forced standing in front of a mirror choreography stuff that, to be fair, I've definitely done before.
I was going to say, man, that sounds like your rehearsals.
You're coming at me. Just because you got a friend today, MPAG. Don't be growing bollocks because he ain't here next week.
So I'll get back in my box in an hour. Don't worry.
Listen. It's all love. It's all love from me. I mean, I think like every band have a different kind of vibe on, on stage and what works for them and stuff. And for us, like I think you described it pretty well. It was just, I think we kind of embraced the kind of chaotic nature of our show. So the more weird it got, the better, I think, for most of us, really. So, apart from when people had to go to hospital afterwards, that was always maybe where we pushed it a bit too far.
That man will never walk again, but never mind.
Mistakes were made. Mistakes were made.
So let's, while we're on the subject of Rhino, let's take it back a little bit and just sort of talk, if you can, a little bit about, obviously you touched on it there, but how exactly did it come about? Because I think it's a really interesting story, like the way that you sort of, it all just seemed to fall together. It's like from where
It really did, yeah. It was, it was a really synergistic kind of strange kind of like timing of everything, because my band, I was in a band at the time who I was playing guitar for, and we had basically decided we were going to be calling it a day, and we got asked to play this kind of like hardcore all-day festival type thing in North Kent, and we said, okay, we'll go and do that as our last show. So we went and did that, and then basically the band on before us, I was outside smoking, and someone came out and said, you need to come in and watch this band, and I watched it and I really liked them. So I was like trying to work out who it was on the bill, and I remember looking down the the lineup of who was playing, and one of the bands was Feed the Rhino, and I remember thinking, oh please God, don't be Feed the Rhino, because that's the worst band name I've ever heard. And then it was, and then we kind of got chatting and realised that their previous band to that band, and my previous band to the band I was playing at that show with, had toured together or played a few shows together back in the day. So we had actually kind of knew each other loosely, and we just kind of got chatting, ended up hanging out, and then they sent me a message on MySpace 2 days later asking me if I wanted
MySpace.
Yep. Oh yeah.
That's the good old days, mate. The good old days.
That's how far back. That's how far back we went. Yeah. So. That was it really, and then they had 5 songs recorded, like demoed, and they sent them to me, and kind of basically said, look, if you can learn 1 or 2 songs of this, that'll be fine. But the band I'd just been kind of playing and touring with for the last 6 years was kind of like a bad version of Dillinger Escape Plan and Sixth mixed together. So I was kind of so used to like playing super techie, weird time signatures and stuff like that. These songs, I found it pretty easy to learn. So when I went to play them, I had all the 5 songs down, and I think they appreciated the fact that I could actually play all the songs. So it just kind of made obvious sense, really. And then within 2 months, we were kind of recording the record, and then within 4 months, it was we had just signed to a indie label and started touring it, really. So it was really just kicked straight off.
That's pretty cool, man. Like that's like it's always nice when you kind of like find people that kind of like have got the same idea of what they kind of want to do, and you're like, oh, actually, I already kind of know them, and we kind of get on. And from there, you kind of fall into a band, and that's kind of like I think some of the best bands are formed in a very similar way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing is as well is I think with Rhino, which is probably different to all the other bands that I've been in, is that everyone was really, really driven. So usually we have a band where one person is kind of like the figurehead of the band, if you will, and the other people kind of sometimes they're kind of so laid back, they're horizontal, they kind of have to be carried through it.
That doesn't sound familiar at all.
Well, I've basically spent most of my life around bands, so I know exactly. I can see the dynamics. But with Rhino, it was strange because everyone was very active in its kind of success and or failure. And everyone really cared and gave a shit enough to really kind of put themselves out to push it to be something cool. So it was just a good kind of group of people, and we all kind of really had a shared vision of what we wanted to do and how far we wanted to go. And that's not to say it wasn't without its difficulties or like, there were clashes at times, of course, but I think that was probably
it just comes part and parcel with the territory, doesn't it? You're in a band,
absolutely,
there will be, but when you've got 4 guys, 5 guys, I mean, we know a band that's got 7 guys or whatever,
Lord.
and when you've got that many people that are all kind of striving for the same thing, and there's a lot of creativity flowing around, there's obviously going to be a lot of opinions, and there's going to be times where someone's saying, I think we should do A, and someone's going, well, I think we should do B, and then the other person's going, well, if we're not doing A, I'm going to throw all my toys out the pram, and the person going B going, well, throw them. So it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, it's funny because I think the things, I mean, I can probably speak a little bit more freely on this now because obviously the band kind of came to an end last year. Yeah, about a year ago. And the things that we disagreed on and maybe did have fallings out were generally never really to do with anything creative. It was more just logistical stuff. But it was a weird thing with Rhino is that the writing process was probably the best I've ever had with any band because I think it was one of those things where we could all leave our egos at the door a little bit and just everyone was just cared about making a song right. So it was a really cool thing that the drummer Chris would write a lot of the vocals. Lee, the singer, would write a lot of guitar riffs. I would write drum parts. Sam, the guitarist, would write bass parts. Like everyone was working on each other's stuff, so there was just this kind of real collaborative.
Really cool, yeah. So everyone really feels kind of like they're involved, and everyone's kind of creating the masterpiece from every sort of angle, which I think is cool. I mean, I think that would be a really cool dynamic. I guess every band has a very different dynamic. I mean, for me. Yeah. It's basically, there's this ongoing joke of like, which is more relevant than ever currently, because the ongoing joke is normally, right, we're going to lock TD in his room and not let him out till we've got some songs. And that's exactly what actually is happening at the moment. So for me, like, I kind of always kind of write on my own and get a song to like sort of, I suppose, 90% done and kind of show the guys. And it's just how it works for each band is always really interesting. And I always find it so interesting the different processes people go through to create their form of artwork.
I think so too, and it's awesome for me again because obviously my day job I get to kind of see that as well, and how different kind of people go even through that kind of inception process of kind of coming up with an idea to kind of having it band ready or kind of recording ready. It changes so much from people to people, band to band. So yeah, I think you're right. I think everyone's different, and certainly in the bands I've been in before, the band I was in before Rhino, I think I was kind of more of the kind of major songwriter in that. But even in that, there was quite a collaborative thing. But again, it's really weird for me because again, I've done my job for so long now that of recording other bands that. I think that's probably bled into the way that I think about writing and being in a band because I think I always want it to be collaborative because in the studio that's kind of how I tend to work try and make it a really collaborative thing. So I think that's kind of just how it is for me in general.
No, man, that makes sense.
Obviously, I can definitely vouch for that is exactly how it goes down. I think it's interesting. It would be interesting for you, Toby, because I think particularly with the relationship, obviously we had Dan on a few weeks ago and Dan was here talking about the production of the Hollow records and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way that you guys put that together is quite different to the way that we've put the City records together, but ultimately we've come out at sort of like obviously with the same
end kind of finished product,
yeah. So I think it's quite interesting to sort of think about like that, and I think it would be interesting like for you. Maybe we'll come on to that in a little while.
Yeah,
let's talk about the studio because obviously that's I think if I had to, I think you'd probably agree with me, but if there was one thing that we were to sort of pin you down for,
recording
it would
bangers
be that over the. I think it's the production stuff over the music stuff. Obviously, they're one and the same. But
I think I've obviously I've played in bands and stuff since I was really really young. I think I'm probably most proud of the things I've achieved with the studio and obviously the kind of just the career path in general and kind of what I've kind of managed to achieve and build from that. So yeah, I'm really proud of it. I love what I do and I never want to stop doing it. So I suppose that is a thing, but obviously I'm always going to be really proud of what we did with Rhino and everything else, so.
Do you think at some point the Rhino will be unleashed again for like another party show sort of thing?
Fucking hope
do you know what? I think I can probably I wouldn't want to say when, but I could pretty much guarantee it will happen at some point.
That'd be awesome.
Because we all loved it, and it was the reason it came to an end was it wasn't because there was a big kind of fallout or everyone was pulling in different directions kind of artistically or anything like that. I think we kind of realised we had achieved everything that we wanted to achieve, and there wasn't really any kind of clear next step for us that wouldn't involve it, that would involve something that we all felt capable of doing. We got to a point where obviously I'm incredibly busy with my job, but three of the other guys in the band have businesses as well. 2 of them have kids, 2 of them are married. So everyone we got to a point of like what we were putting into the band was the maximum that we could put in, and we just knew that was really, we'd kind of reached the ceiling of what we were able to achieve, and rather than kind of just let it kind of maybe dwindle, we just thought, well, it's probably a good a time as any to kind of knock it on the head, really, and kind of...
It's actually really, really, like, positive from someone who is in a band to know that, because you hear so many horror stories of being like, yeah, we were doing really well, and the third album was going well, and then he stabbed my mum, and then that was the end of the band.
Wow.
Like, so it's nice to hear that they can kind of, do you know what? Like, it can just be like, you know what? We've had a great time here, guys. Let's end this on a high, and like, if we want to revisit it a couple of years down the line for a show, and all the fans will come back out, and it'll be a good laugh. Like that sounds like a dream,
really was.
Really, to be able to end that way.
I think you're right. I feel really lucky. We all, it was something that was talked about. We played our last ever show on end of May last year, and it was at the Underworld, and it was just such a good night. And I think a lot of people, I mean, our booking agent came up to us, and he actually said to us, you won the game, you know, you've done 10 years of absolutely everything on your own terms, and kind of, you know, you got to release music and tour and do all that cool stuff, and then you got to walk away kind of debt free with friends and with kind of just with good memories without it being kind of tarnished by you know, a lawsuit or a, you know, #MeToo or a
jeez. Oh god, no, please no.
You know, but you know what I'm saying though, you know, I think it's
for sure,
I think we, you know, it was good, you know, and as I said, we all still remain friends and send each other memes on our band WhatsApp chat every day, so yeah.
Dude, I think that's a rite of passage at this point, isn't it? It's like, you know, band or no band, if you're a band of brothers, that will always be a thing. I can see myself sending memes when I'm like 85, one of them's dead. I mean, I'll probably go first, to be fair, but they'll still be sending memes by the time I'm
Lou Dog
dead.
will be the first blooming drummer to send into space. Like,
Oh, Lou Dog is a fucking meme, man.
He'll drum his way into space, yeah.
He is a meme. But yeah, I guess to sort of like to wrap the Rhino section, as I'm going to call it, up. I mean, if you could kind of pinpoint, obviously, what you've said is, I think, I would probably call that the dream, to be honest, to be able to kind of do it on your own terms.
Yeah, for sure. It was
then
awesome.
sort of put a pin in it. I'm going to say, not necessarily knock it on the head, but put a pin in it for now. I think it's amazing. But if there's like one like thing that you can kind of take away from it, it might be a moment or a particular thing that you did or something like that. What would be the one thing that you kind of go, this is mint?
That was so difficult because it was 10 years of kind of
course,
extreme highs and extreme lows, and it was so many moments. I don't know. I mean, I think the first
you don't have to
time,
give me your top one, obviously.
No, I'll give you the ones that pop into my head. There's definitely a few. I think they're always going to be festivals for me personally, because that was always a big thing. I remember the first time we ever played an outside festival was the first year we played on the main stage at a heavy festival, and that was a really special moment of like looking out and seeing kind of, you know, 5,000 people or whatever there was outside, you know, and being outside on a sunny day, and that just felt like a dream that I'd kind of always had as a kid to play that. But then, you know, first time selling out a London venue, and then, you know, to go on to selling out shows all over. Maida Vale, doing a live session at Maida Vale was really special. And obviously, you know, main stage Reading and Leeds definitely is going to be one of those. That was a pretty wild moment.
That for me, I was hoping you were going to mention that one, because that for me was like, I remember you guys doing it and being like, fucking hell, like, they're doing it. That's insane. And then I remember seeing the photo, and it's like, you would imagine that normally with stuff like this, you'd get, you know, your Ollie D or your whoever it's going to be, you know, with your big snazzy camera and your fancy photography and everything else, and that would be your image. I remember the first thing I saw of that was a photograph of you on the screen to the side of the stage, and I was like, that is the fucking coolest thing I've ever seen.
It was unreal, man. It was the experience itself was it was just, yeah, we all kind of felt like I remember our manager Matt telling us that we were going to be opening the main stage, and literally no one believed him. We were just like, nah, that's not going to happen. We're going to get bumped onto, you know, another stage or something, which would still be cool. You know, we played Reading before on a different stage, and it was awesome. But we just never believed it, and we were like, well, until we see that poster with our name on that stage, we're not going to believe you. And when that came through, it was like we had already. I think that was a celebration in that moment for us. So before we'd even walked on stage, we all had a beer and kind of just cheersed each other and just said, well, whatever happens on stage is a bonus.
I mean, in terms of achievements, it's such a... it's like it's got to be up there in pinnacle terms of like mental things to happen. Even maybe if it's not like the thing that you enjoyed the most, but like to be able to say that you've done that is something that so few people can say.
Yeah,
that it's a really nice thing to kind of have in the memory bank. I
yeah,
suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think like it was, as I said, we definitely felt like we do not belong here. So it was just like, I think someone made a grave error putting us on, but, we were like, well, we're going to enjoy the shit out of it. And, we put on 17 guitar cabs on the stage and, just did put in an 11 metre wide backdrop and stuff like that because we were just like, well, why not? I don't think there's ever going to be any other chances of us, getting to live out this experience. So let's just go mad on it and just do all the cool stuff that we always wanted to do. So that's what we did.
I think it's mega, man. Like,
I've kept this from Mikey, but I'm actually not to fanboy. I was actually quite a big Rhino fan.
Oh, thank you.
So for me, it's I kept this because I knew we were going to have you on. I didn't want him to know.
Okay, cool.
Oh, that's so fun.
That's awesome.
I've got a wetty. Oh, Christ. You and me are going to have words after this, mate. I'm telling you. Christ. Right. So I just had a question. Like, did you have a favourite track or a favourite record? Because my favourite was Black Horse.
Oh, yeah.
Like for me,
man.
absolute
cheers.
banger. So
I love that song, yeah. That record, that's probably... That record or the one after it, The Silence, the last one we did, are my favourites for sure. I think... It was really weird that the album that the Black Horse is on is the Sorrow and the Sound, and that album. Oh, this is a really long answer to a short question.
No, it's fine. I'm interested. I find this sort of stuff well interesting because for me, like that record, like it feels so cohesive. Like it feels like everything on that record serves a purpose, and like for me as a composer, I always love records where it sounds like everything was thought about and there was not one song for me that feels like it's been put on that record for the sake of being there. Like everything ties into one another, and that's one of the reasons I think that I really, really relate to that record.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really, really kind of you to say, actually. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's the only one.
All is forgiven.
Everybody gets one.
All the Asda comments are forgiven now.
Fantastic.
I think, I mean, for me, I think why I love that album so much. I mean, I love all the albums. I like Children, so you love all of them, and you have kind of different relationships with the things you like and dislike about them.
But you always have a favourite, though, right? Because every parent's got a favourite,
Well, I think the reason The Sorrow is for me was because, as I said before, everyone in the band are very active members. No one's a kind of a passive player in the band. Everyone is very kind of strong opinions, strong beliefs about the songs and the image and the writing, but obviously the production as well. And kind of people had designs over how their own things should sound, how things should fit together. So I think the first album, which was called Mr. Red Eye, I joined the band after half that record was written. And then I recorded it and mixed it within, it was literally like 2 weeks or something ridiculous because there was no money and we were just basically self-funding it. So I just did it on the cheap, but I said we had to smash it out really. So it's a very much a kind of raw, pretty basic recording and capture. And it was just a kind of very fast process. But I love that album because it's kind of got this rawness to it that I think it sounds quite angry and it kind of encapsulates that kind of like sound to it. The second album, I think everyone had these like really extreme desires to kind of, I want my drums to sound like this, I want my guitars to sound like this, I want the vocals to do this. And I think everyone was kind of because we'd done okay with the first album, it had done way better than we all could have imagined it. I think we were at the point where we had an advance to do the second album and we had some time to actually really think about things. So I think the second album was a bit of an exploration of kind of figuring out what was possible. But the third album, for The Sorrow and the Sound, that was the album I said, right, well, if I'm going to be doing album number 3, this is the album that you will have to take more of a back seat in the production of, and I'm going to produce it like an actual record that I would do for bands that, I get paid to do it on a daily basis for. I'm not going to be a band member, I'm going to be a producer. And
that's cool.
Yeah, and I think so that album, they did that, and they trusted me to kind of completely leave a lot of things in my hands, and, and I think that's probably maybe where that cohesion comes a little bit from. Certainly sonically, I think. it sounds to me more kind of cohesive as an album because I think I had a bit more control over how all the parts fitted together, I guess.
I find that really, really interesting. I mean, I remember the first time I heard the Butchers and was like, I literally feel like I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
Like, so
I remember.
Like, I love the band. I said I didn't tell Mikey because he'd have been like, oh, I know him. Oh. So it's interesting to talk about. But say like for me, like
no, it's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate that, and it's funny you said about the Butchers. That was the song the first song I auditioned with.
Oh, amazing! Oh, look at that. It all goes
Mate.
round the circle, mate. We get back there. But yeah, for me, like the Sorrow and the Sound. I mean, I say I followed Rhino anyway, and like I like the records. But for me, as I say, that record, like it felt for me. Like I said, like it was almost like one continuous piece of music where everything was kind of like ticking a different box for the record. So yeah, fair play, man. Because it's I know it's not an easy job to create something like that, and I guess it's very similar to the way Adam D worked on those early Killswitch records, I suppose, where he's a band member and he's written the songs and helped compose them, but he's also then kind of like producing them. So he's like, well, look, you kind of just got to trust me with this.
Yeah.
And like to be able to do that, like I'm no recording engineer. I mean, I can write songs and stuff like that, but it must be like really cool to be able to have taken that from what you did with your band and then now incorporate that into your studio, like where you're helping bands put their songs together.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think that side of things came before because I was, recording bands and stuff before I was in Rhino. I mean, that's the kind of how long I've actually been doing it for.
Wow.
So it was weird for me that I think I actually wanted to produce less for Feed the Rhino because I didn't want it to feel kind of like, trying to kind of like step in. I don't know, with other bands, when someone's paying you to do a job, I feel quite comfortable saying, okay, this is how it's going to be done. And I listened to the Adam podcast as well, which is awesome. Dan Kerr podcast. And it was really good. And he said the same thing, is that you people are paying you to do a job and you want to do your job and do it the way you know how to do it. But when you're in the band, it's a bit more difficult to kind of assert that kind of role. So I think it kind of took me 3 albums to really warm up to the idea of doing it. And certainly by the fourth one, by The Silence, I felt more, I was definitely more of a producer than a bass player on that album. I think I spent probably all of an hour thinking about bass parts, really, when I was more thinking about the songs. And
I feel like that album for me is like sonically probably my favourite one.
Thank you.
I just feel like it's not necessarily. I mean, I love that album, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it's. I mean, as you would expect, because obviously with it being the last one, it's over time, obviously you're going to get better and better and better. And things like that. But it just feels like I can kind of see why it might have sort of at that point gone, okay, lads, that's it. Do you know what I mean? Like we've kind of done it. We've reached the top of the mountain almost.
There's a funny thing on that album as well, is if you listen to the song The Silence, the lyrics are kind of about us not being in a band anymore. So it kind of it was a bit of foreshadowing. So no one ever picked up on that.
I love it. I love a liner note. I'm going to go and listen to it after this and weep.
Yeah,
that does make sense actually. Now that you say that, I've never even thought about it like that before. But
yeah. So I mean, I think it would have been something that we had discussed and knew that there was going to be some kind of time limit or shelf life to the band. So I think we just wanted to make a really cool album and get everything out that we wanted to get out. So. But yeah, no, it was awesome. It was a very, very fortunate experience. I'm really lucky that James sent me a message on MySpace and asked me to do it.
I just wish MySpace was still a thing, man.
That was great, wasn't it?
R.I.P.
What was the? I don't know if you guys were you guys on MySpace? Did you do?
I was on MySpace.
I was on MySpace, mate. I had my backcombed hair and my, X to bikes, X username, whatever it was.
Excellent. What was the thing? Do you remember the thing where it was like top 8 or whatever?
Oh yeah.
There was the top thing, and then that was kind of it became like this political thing of like if you were in someone's top 8 but they weren't in yours, that was like a
it was a big deal, mate. It was a big deal. And like when your band had a page as well, you're like, well, if we put that band in there, then maybe they'll put us in there, and then they never did, and then you're like, well, you're coming out of my top 8. It's like, oh god.
Exactly. There was so much politics, wasn't there? It was awesome. I tell you what, I never forget with MySpace the moment it crashed and burned. I'll never forget this. That I paid I can't remember. It wasn't like tons, but I think I paid over £100 to have a graphic designer build me a custom, like really posh looking MySpace layout, and it was up for 2 days, and then they changed the algorithm of the whole site, and it wouldn't accept kind of custom artwork on the MySpace pages anymore, basically. And that was it. I think everyone just came off MySpace within a week or something. It was crazy. Dude. MySpace died within a week because of that one thing they did.
It was. Oh man, I remember MySpace being such a thing because I remember it being really good for bands at the time. I mean, it was also good.
Yeah, I think there's certainly. I mean, you know, I'm no expert on social media stuff, but obviously I spend my days kind of talking to bands and, you know, talking about, you know, how to promote the records that we've worked on and stuff. And it's interesting that one thing that MySpace did right, I think, was that there was no kind of back end kind of algorithms to upsell to kind of like do advertising and things like that. I think it was a bit more of a pure platform. So I think there's definitely something. Well, that was it. I mean,
if you had 5,000 friends, because your band was as an entity was a user on MySpace, wasn't it? So if your band had 5,000 friends and you posted a bulletin, which is the same as posting a status, I suppose, on Facebook for all you young'uns out there who don't remember the days, the golden years, like
glory days.
That's it. So you'd post a bulletin, and if you had 500 friends, that would appear in 500 people's bulletin feed. Whereas now, like Hollow, for example, the minute we hit 100,000 likes on Facebook, it was like, cool. So now, you know, all those people that were seeing it, you've got more people who like your page, so less people will see it. And you end up spending more and more money to get people to see stuff. It's so sad.
It's not right, is it? No, it's definitely, it's not a fair thing. And I mean, it's all monetized, and I get that. And I've kind of listened to some podcasts where they talked about the why it's a good thing, about kind of what you can do about streamlining it to. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys, you both very successful with your online presence of both your bands, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. But there was something very pure and kind of innocent about MySpace as a platform, I think, that is missed.
It was.
Man. It was amazing for bands. Let's talk about the studio.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's I don't know, man. I just feel like you don't get, and I don't, you know, I don't need to say this really, but like, I don't feel like you get enough credit for what's happened in terms of the way that you put your studio together, the age you were when you did it, which I think is still the thing for me, which I was just like, it just blows my mind. I remember, obviously, I knew how long you'd been there, and I knew how old you were, but it was when we had the conversation of, oh my God, like, fuck me, he was a child when he started doing this. It's fucking mental. So if you don't mind, let's Back to the Future that shit, and let's go back a little bit, and if you just give us a little bit of an insight on how Hidden Track came about, because I think it's fucking awesome.
I'll kind of go from the beginning, and then if this gets too long-winded or boring, you can edit it down into bullet points. But I always knew I wanted to do something with music and kind of technology, or kind of something to that effect, because they were really the only two things I ever gave a shit about in my whole entire life, other than a short spell wanting to be a police officer as a kid. That was basically all I ever wanted to do, was music or make things. They were the two things. And I kind of always, I think from like the age of, I started playing guitar when I was 7. So like I was always just really interested. I knew that it was going to kind of be a thing. And when I was like a teenager, I decided that the best application of those two things was building guitars. And I decided that's what I was going to do, is build guitars. And then I made a guitar, and it was the worst guitar. Honest, I mean, it was a terrible, terrible guitar, unplayable. But as I was building it, basically, this was when I did my work experience. And I'd already been recording at home. I had a 4-track, and kind of, again, it was kind of like, you know, I enjoyed the kind of like fiddling with stuff and like building a kind of, you know, a collection of like microphones or whatever, and plugging it all together and figuring out how it works. But I also love music. So I wanted to do my work experience around kind of building guitars or fixing guitars. And there was a place in the hometown that I was in where I grew up, in a place called Deal in Kent. And there was a music shop there, and they had like a guitar workshop. So that's where I got my work experience. But they also had a recording studio there. And I'll never forget, it's just such a clear moment in my head that I was kind of like a tea boy for the whole shop and the whole business, really. I was just ferrying tea and coffee around to all the people that worked there for a couple of weeks. And I'll never forget walking into a studio and there was a session on to take the engineer Mark a cup of tea, and being not a musician and just being someone that was kind of quote unquote an employee, and being able to kind of stand there as a third party and just appreciate someone else making music and recording music. And it sounds cliche, but it's genuine true that I was just like, oh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It was just so super clear for me at 15 that I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Really cool,
and it was,
man.
yeah, it was just such a powerful experience. And I was just like, oh, this is such an awesome moment. So basically from that point onwards, everything I did was obsession about recording, and basically that was my only focus on, well, since I was 15 to now, so 20 years, it's basically all I've been focused on is recording. So I got a job there after work experience, kind of got trained doing little sessions, and I did hundreds of sessions in that studio, just kind of doing like vocal over backing tracks, or maybe on, if I was really lucky, it would be an acoustic guitar player and a vocal, but it was that kind of type stuff. And then when I was 18 or 19, I was in a band that just kind of got signed to an indie label. And we were kind of starting to tour a bit more, and I would kind of felt like I wanted to record more bands. I wasn't doing enough band recording. So, decided that I was going to start recording on my own. So I was still living at my parents' house. So I rented their garage off them. I used to pay them like what I could in rent to kind of basically halve their garage and put in a little control room and a little live room. And when I say little, I mean it was literally, you could barely fit a drum kit in there. So that's kind of how I started. I went self-employed at just before my 19th birthday. I went self-employed doing this, and then within a year I was doing stuff for Big Scary Monsters and like quite really cool record labels, and I had stuff on MTV and Radio 1. And it just kind of happened within a year, and there was bands from pretty much all over the UK and like Scotland and Ireland and Newcastle driving down to Deal to basically come into my parents' garage and let me record their band, which is mental, isn't it? It was mental. My mum gardening outside and stuff like that. It was crazy. So that was basically the inception, and then it was pretty apparent that after a year I was like, I need to upscale this. So it then took about 3 years to figure out how I was actually going to do that, and 3 or 4 years, and then so when I was 23 I moved into the studio I'm still in now, in Folkestone, and that was a pretty boring long story about how I got into that studio, but I got in. It took a long time to do, but and I've been there ever since, and it's just kind of grown and grown, and been really fortunate to like work with some amazing people and from all kind of genres and from all over the world. So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
That's awesome, dude. That's mental from that age as well. I'm like, at that age I was still probably playing Nintendo and stuff like that. So fair play.
Thank you. I mean, I think like. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm looking at my Nintendo right now. I'm 35, so I mean, it's. I think I was just lucky in one way that like I've always been. I'm not very good at doing things I don't want to do, and that sounds really weird. But like, I mean, I was terrible at school, and I was terrible at pretty much most things because I'm only good at applying myself to something I give a shit about, and like. And luckily, I found something I really, really was passionate about. And so I'll just tend to kind of the blinkers come on, and that just becomes more like an obsession, I think, than a kind of vocation or a kind of passion or anything. It really is like obsessive for me about recording and working with cool bands. And making
I completely get that.
Songs.
I mean, my dad, who sadly passed away, one of the things that he said to me that stuck with me, and I think will stick with me for the rest of my life, was that life is too short to do something that makes you miserable.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, it's obviously sorry for your loss as well. I mean, it's
no, dude, it's cool, but it's about doing something that if you can live your life comfortably and strive to achieve goals, but actually enjoy every second you get on this planet. And I don't want to go down this philosophical route and stuff like that, but it's important.
I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I think like what's the point in kind of spending a life doing something you hate just to kind of make money to buy things you don't need. It does seem a bit wild to me. I mean, I think I was never really that financially driven as a person as well, which is a damn good thing when you work in the music industry.
Preach.
Yeah.
Preach it.
So I think I was pretty lucky that I didn't really care. Like, so, you know, after the studio started doing okay, I moved out from home and I lived in my friend's box room in his flat. And, you know, I didn't even drink. I couldn't afford to drink alcohol at the time. So I didn't drink. And like, you know,
Oh, how times have changed.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, the years have been good to me, but, I can afford to drink now, which is great. But yeah, no, it's, you know, as I said, it's just, I've always really, all I cared about is being able to do what I do. And fortunately, over, you know, the last kind of 15 years or however long it's been, it has got to a point where financially it's kind of, life's a lot more comfortable now than it was when I was living in my friend's box room. But yeah, you know, it's great. But for me, I think the minute I stop actually caring about it and just think about money, I'd probably go into doing something else, because, you know, I just like making music.
Man, that's cool. You know, you are literally living the dream.
The dream or the nightmare, depending.
It's probably both some days.
But yeah, it's very cool. I don't know if Mikey's ever said this to you, but there's definitely a reputation amongst bands that, like, I work with, that I'm a bit of a kind of, I'm brutal with the hours I do in the studio, because I forget that other people don't want to be there as much as I do, because I love being in that room making music so much that I just don't notice the time go.
You've got the relationship with Mikey that I have with Dan, so we'll be there, and I know exactly what you're doing. You're like, right, we do days of 10 till 6 or whatever it is, and then at 11:30 that night, and you've still got loads of blooming stems for like synth to do.
Yep.
And you're like, we should probably call it a night, and everyone's like, we're going to keep going? Yeah, we're going to keep going. All right, fine. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got it on the money, except I've only ever been said, I'll see you at 10. That's all I ever get. Is see you at 10. And it's like, Oz, it's 3:30 in the morning, fam. He's like, see you at 10. And then somehow you're bowling in the morning like, hello, mate. And I'm like, I've been run over. Like,
I think you're being very generous to me. I mean,
I mean, to be fair,
if we have it right, I am the fucking worst morning person there is. I'm like, I can barely have a conversation before I've gone and got my coffee in the morning. So
I mean,
but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's.
I feel like that's definitely something. Obviously, having worked with you for as many years as I have now, which
5?
We worked out was a lot longer than I think we both realised, which is a little bit odd. But yeah, I think that's something that I certainly, you know, I've worked with a few different producers in the past and had very different experiences. And everyone I've worked with has been awesome. And you know, I worked with Dan Lank, which was amazing. Like he's an incredibly talented guy.
It actually hurts me how good he is. Like, I'm like, I don't understand.
Oh man, like he's just the most like insane individual in literally every way. But he is, you know, he's remarkably talented. Like it's phenomenal, and it's completely different to working with you. And I don't know, there's just something about the relationship that we had with you, because like the first time we came to visit Hidden Track, we were I don't know, I'd have been 21, I reckon, probably. We were we'd only been a band for, I don't know, weeks at this time. We'd basically booked it in and gone, yeah, we're just going to go for it. We finished writing the song literally the night before. And then we sort of we'd sort of demoed it. And then I think, you know, we were like, right, we're going to go, demoed it in my front room, went to Jay's house in Essex. And then we were driving down from there to you in the morning. And we got there at you were like, get there for 10. So we were like, it must be, I don't know, 60 miles maybe. We were like, 60 miles away. We better leave at 6 a.m. I remember there's a wicked photo that will always be one of my favourite photos of City, with it's me, Sam and George down at the front, the seafront, literally about 8:15 in the morning, because we were so fucking early, because we were like, the traffic will be terrible. And then we got there and it was like, we just... fancy a Macca's breakfast, boys.
I really remember that session. You know, it was funny because as Mikey was saying, we did one song. It was a reason. It was basically we tracked it all in a day. And whenever you do one song in a day with a band that you've never met, it can either be the best or the worst.
Yeah, I imagine.
Essentially, experience. It can either be hell or it can be just such a good time. And
feel free to go all in here, man, because we've talked about this before. Because your boys turned up. Like,
yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So that I will never forget. I think on a couple of, I mean, it all blurs together because of how many times you guys have been down now, but
too many.
But from memory, I think twice during that one day. Bearing in mind, this is the first time I had to meet him. I had to kind of pull him aside when we were going out for coffee or food and be like, boys, you do know I live here. You can't actually just walk around screaming obscenities. Like, you do realise that I'm here tomorrow and you're not. So, but no, I remember you guys being a lot of fun. I remember us all clicking and just a really great vibe in the studio. Super positive, which is probably the most important thing for me, is just having a really great atmosphere. And then sending you the mix, and always kind of that kind of, whenever you work with a new band, you're like, oh, this how's this going to go down? Are they going to be into it? And you guys were just like really keen on the mix, and I just remember thinking, oh, that's how it should be, just a great band who know how to play their instruments. There was no dramas, no one, didn't have to kind of really hold anyone's hand too much in the session. Everyone knew what they were playing and what they were doing, and the songs were great, and you were nice guys, and everyone was just optimistic and positive. It was a dream.
Dude, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, remember it well.
The feeling is mutual on that one, definitely, because it was, I think, like I said, we'd all been in bands before, we'd all sort of had different paths, worked with lots of different people between us, but we'd all sort of said that was the best session that we'd ever had. I mean, a lot of it was the excitement of, obviously it was a new band, and I've said this to you before, but like, it really felt like for me particularly, and obviously with the guys, like I'd started writing that song before we'd even had a full five lads at that point. So I'd kind of had this demo, and it was the first thing that I'd been working on with this new project, and we got it back. So I remember getting the mix back the next day and being like, fuck me, like that was quick, it's done, wow. And I remember sitting in my car, and it was just like, oh fuck, like we've actually done it, like we're a band now, this is a thing. And that was it. That was like the sort of turning point, really, for me, and I guess I'm sure the other guys would say the same as well. But it was like,
I just really like, I think there's certain bands, and I think like you can like look back on who I've worked with and how much I've worked with certain bands over the last kind of like however many years. And I think you can see bands that I just really click with and what they're doing. I just get what they're doing, and it just makes so much sense to me. And I think you guys are one of those bands where it's like, I can hear one of your songs, and even if it's in its most raw, very basic demo form of just a kind of scratch vocal over a single guitar part, I can just hear it the way I hear it. And then when we've kind of finished that vision, you're like, yeah, that's exactly how I imagined it to be. So I feel like our vision for the stuff is the same, and that's why it's just worked, and I think we both have a very similar work ethic as well, of just like wanting to, we're both always on.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. I feel like, that's definitely something. I feel like I've said to you multiple times that I feel like I trust you more than I trust myself. I know that was definitely a thing. No, but it's true, man, because like, obviously we've got a great relationship now and everything else, but I remember that like the Low album particularly, obviously by that point we were all in terms of, we're two records and another session deep by that point. We knew each other fairly well, and it was a bit like, I just remember second guessing so much stuff, and you just had this weird, like, I know there's the joke, for those of you that don't know, there's a joke that goes
I was going to say, does Toby know about Poker Face?
This is new to me.
Well, yeah. There's a little thing. I mean, Os, you should probably talk about this, really, because it's you, not, wait, it's me, but it's you, not me, really, isn't it? Like,
okay, well, I don't know how it like is with you.
I mean, you can go all in. I literally couldn't give a fuck. Like,
oh right, I know. I mean, I'll just tell it how it kind of occurs to me. But I mean, obviously, if you're the dominant songwriter, TD, like I suppose when you're in the studio working with Dan, he's probably kind of turning around to you quite often and being like, so what's the vibe on this, or is this how you imagine it going in, or what do you think about that? Would I be right in kind of guessing that that's kind of that dynamic is going on in your studio?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, as when we first went to Dan, that was very much how it was. Because of the way I write now, I've kind of become a bit more of a producer role within the band. Yeah, that makes sense. So more of it now is me and him going, well, this is kind of how I'm hearing it. And he's like, well, maybe we should look at this dynamic for this bit. And I'm like, cool. Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, I completely get where you're coming from.
Yeah, so there was exactly like that. So with Mikey and stuff, I could tell that he had a very clear vision for the songs So he would be someone that I would kind of, if I was kind of, made a suggestion on the part or something, we'd execute it, and then I'd like to then turn around and say, what's the vibe of the room? What do people think? Do you agree with that kind of this change I've made or that suggestion I've made? And Mikey just has this way about him. It's funny because I haven't seen it for a while now, so I have to really go back. But he would just stare at me with this like blank, soulless expression in his face, and just silence for a couple of seconds, stare me in the eyes and just go, yeah, man. And I'm like, Mikey, that tells me nothing. You're giving me nothing. And I'm like, listen, I'd rather you literally told me the idea was terrible and you hated me and everything I stood for than just kind of gave me this like death stare with no emotion behind it, because it's freaking me out. So, and then I coined the nickname Poker Face Page. From that, because he used to just stare at me and go, yeah, man.
It's usually
and
like,
that was it.
The problem is that it was usually because I found myself quite often, I had like a really clear vision of what I wanted with the record, and what it's not because of it's like this is what I want, but like what I thought was going to be the best for our band.
Yeah. How you probably had it in your head when you were writing the songs.
Exactly, yeah. And I feel like what it was for me is it was sort of working out and figuring out like the way in which to kind of sort of adapt and change things, and but also kind of a lot of the time I would sort of be pandering to like other people and things like that. And I feel like as our band has evolved as well, like we are very much kind of like, we write demos now and it's like, right, we're doing this, and obviously we've learned a lot from working with you and we know how things sound, and obviously Jay does a lot of the demoing and he's a pretty good producer in his own right in a lot of ways. So it's we've got sort of better and better at it. 'Cause the initial demos for the first record, at least, were all stuff that I'd done. Mm-hmm. So it was all like I had the vision, but not the ability to be able to kind of make it sound how I thought it would sound. So if it was outside of that box, it was kind of difficult for me to go, I don't really know how to. And then everyone's eyes are burning into me because it's like, well, what's Mikey going to say? Because if Mikey says that it's shit, and then you're just like, yeah, but what do you think, man? And I'm like, oh, I literally don't even know what to say at this point. And the big problem is that the worst times where the poker face would come out was when it was things that I was like, not necessarily this is garbage, but usually the worst times would be when we were having a discussion. You'd be like, right, we need to kind of resolve this. You'd be like, what do you think, man? And I'm just like, yeah, man. And it's like the thing is, I think that's a sort of testament to our relationship as well. Is it's like that just doesn't happen anymore. I feel like you and I have got quite a similar. Like we think about things in a similar way when it comes to the City records, particularly.
Exactly, and I think also it's kind of my philosophy of my job and how I kind of like try and run sessions as well, is that like I want everyone to be able to kind of quite openly speak their opinion. I think that's really important. As I said, I kind of like this whole kind of community kind of something greater than the sum of its parts vibe in a session. So I want everyone to be able to kind of really be open and free about what they think. And obviously, as long as no one's being like offensive, like I'd rather people say I think it's shit. I really would rather that than kind of people just kind of are apathetic. Have
you ever gone to someone and been like, so what do you think of this? And it's kind of like there's like the band leader or the main person, and they're sat there and you've gone to and you're looking at them to speak, and then the other guy goes, oh, I really like it, and the main person's like, how dare you have an opinion? I think it's trash.
Oh yeah, for sure that's happened. Yeah,
oh man,
that happens.
And you're just there like, oh okay then.
I think that is. Do you know what? I think that is the one thing about doing this job that people don't realise is such a big thing. Is when you like day in day out kind of run sessions with different bands, you get super sharp to kind of the dynamic of the band and kind of who to. And it's like a game of chess sometimes where, obviously I've got to kind of earn people's trust, but the way I earn that trust isn't necessarily just by siding with the band kind of leader, if you will. Sometimes it's about kind of getting the people that maybe play a secondary role in the band to kind of trust me enough to be able to kind of, and I don't know, it's just this kind of synergistic thing. So I do want everyone to be able to kind of speak freely, but yeah, sometimes it's the way it comes out isn't the best. There's definitely been some tantrums in that building for sure. Very rarely mine. Rarely. I mean, I have had some tantrums, but rarely mine. But yeah, you know, it's just you know, the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But again, I think it's like part of the producer's job is to manage that and manage the kind of vibe and making sure that people can kind of speak freely and everyone's in this kind of state of where they're all like we're all on the same team here. We're all actually just trying to make something really fucking good.
Yeah.
And if something could be better, I want people to be able to say, but just in a constructive way, essentially.
Yeah, man. I feel like that's always been that's the thing that I kind of learned more than anything else. I think definitely I definitely enjoyed the Low album more than anything else, but I think that's largely because that was the record where I enjoyed it and hated it at the same time because it was like such a mental time, I guess, for us and for you. I felt really bad in a lot of cases because we were fence hopping in a lot of ways. Our band was going through a lot of like mad stuff. We changed management, we changed press agent, we had all of this stuff going on all around the time of finishing that album up. So I do remember I think you've got a really good way of kind of like managing that, because I remember, obviously we speak a lot anyway, but I remember having a conversation about the final mixes and you just like pulling me to one side almost and just being like, what the fuck is going on? But like not in a bad way, but just kind of like Mikey, this is done. Like we've done this. Yeah. This is a thing. We can't be. And I was kind of like, oh yeah. And it was kind of like almost for me like going back into that kind of mode of trying to keep everybody happy so much that almost it's like just stick. You know, like we've done it. Just stick to your guns on it.
I think this is it. And I think bands sometimes forget that like the process of mixes, then mix revisions, and that it should be a kind of filtration process. That's what it should be, in my opinion. Again, every producer and mix engineer might be different, and I'm sure people would disagree with me. But I want the first mix. So how I like it to be is the first mix, unless I say so, is to me perfect. And like, you know, if I don't generally send kind of work in progress mixes. They're generally everything is done to the way that I think is perfect. Now, it doesn't mean that it's the final mix where everything is perfect. It's just I'm satisfied that everything's working as it should in that mix. And then it's usually a case of these are our issues with the mix. You know, generally they, you know, especially with a band that I've worked with a lot, they're usually just kind of the odd like backing level of like that guitar part over there, or we want more impact on this, or we want these harmonies turned down, you know, the usual stuff. And then it's just a filtering process from every revision, usually to get those issues resolved as quickly as possible. So sometimes when bands kind of go through that and then kind of somewhere down the line, these new notes appear that are just really bizarre. That's usually when I'm like, something's going on here that's not actually about the mix. It's usually something else that's happening either in the band or in, you know, and that's usually when I pull the band aside and go, you're not the first people, mate, and you won't be the last. You know, you can just spot it because usually most bands are like, as I said, it's a kind of filtration process, and then sometimes something happens. And I've had it with loads of bands, and they'll say it's kind of quite an odd. They'll make some odd suggestions. You're like, right, okay, is this an issue with the mix, or is there other things going on at play at the band that I need to know about? And more often than not, they're like, oh, actually, we're really stressed about this, and I'm like, okay. Will turning all the drums down 25 dB fix your stress about the band, or will it just fuck that mix up that we've worked really hard on? And they'll go, yeah, to be fair, like, you know, so it's sometimes you've got to know that. And I don't think people do it intentionally. I think a lot of the time it's just that kind of need for some kind of control or change in the band itself. It manifests in these odd mix notes that just appear sometimes. But we kind of worked through that. I can't even remember what they were.
I mean, I think it was just like where we were kind of having lots of discussions, and everybody, not that obviously our team is wonderful, so it's nothing to do with that, but I think it was just where everybody was so aghast about the record because like I remember coming in to do it, and because we recorded that album, obviously for people listening that don't know, we recorded that album in 3 sections, and we did section number 1, and then Connor left the band just before section number 1. We knew that was happening, so it was like we'd got to this point, okay, that's happening, great, Connor's gone, that's fine, we need to find a new drummer, come in. Louis comes in. We've only known him a short amount of time. His first shows with the band were at the end of June, and I remember his first session was the first week of July. So it was quick because I don't know if I've ever told you this actually, but there was a really you know, I'm sure Louis wouldn't mind me saying, but I'm fairly sure he came into the process thinking he was going to come in, set his kit up, bang some mics on it, he'd track the drums, and then he'd fuck off home for a cream tea or, you know, a punnet of mushrooms or whatever it is that he likes to eat. Some bullshit like that, and that would be the end of it. And
raw mushrooms.
And I mean, there was generally the dynamic in the studio is that it will be like myself and Oz, usually Jay, and then the others. Like it's, you know, they'll pop in and out to do their various bits and pieces, but that's kind of like the core sort of trio of us is the way that it usually works. Jay couldn't attend this particular session, and Louis like was going, I'm going to do my thing, and we fucking punished him, like in terms of do it again, man. Oh, can you do that again, man? All day long. And I remember he worked fucking hard, but he got there, man, and it was great. And I just remember
Louis is a absolutely phenomenal drummer as well. It goes, unbelievably good. But I mean, again, like, make no bones about it, I'm an absolute taskmaster with drummers, especially. I think probably more than anyone else, because it has to be right for me.
Well, like, it's the foundations of the record, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And even like, you know, obviously getting the, you know, the macro stuff, like the actual kind of, if it's like, you know, City or any kind of like that kind of more metal-y stuff where it's like the double kick drum patterns are essentially the riff.
Yeah.
You can't have one that just kind of swings off in its own thing, or it really does have to be very like methodically played into the riff. So there's that consideration, but then there's also the kind of consideration of things like fills, or, you know, where they go and what like feeling that fill evokes. Is it leading up to something, or is it feeling like it's breaking out of something, you know, making sure they're right. But then thirdly, it's also, once you've managed all that, it's also getting this performance that sounds actually like it's got some fire to it. Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, you can do all the kind of drum replacement stuff if that's your bag you want to do, but you're never going to get those cymbals and those room mics to sound like the drummer's like laying into it, unless he actually is laying into it. And that's the thing, like, for me, there's no substitute for just a drummer that's really pushing hard and really giving it some beans.
If you're not rim-shotting everything, you're not doing it properly.
Exactly, I agree. So, you know, and that's it. And it's like, it's getting that. So it's not only is it kind of, you've got to manage those three things. So as I said, I am pretty hard on drummers. Like, and also, you know, a big part of what I like and how I do things is that I don't kind of want to rely on, you know, drum samples really. I'm not averse to using them by any stretch of the imagination, but they should be kind of more building on the foundation we got with the sound. And as you were saying, like, to get a really good natural drum sound, it doesn't sound good if you play it soft. So you have to like dig in on it really.
That was it. Like, I think, like, particularly, I just remember, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but we got in the car and I was like, oh, that was good. And it was me and Stu. Stu had come to the session so that it wasn't a sort of standoff situation, putting you in an awkward spot, obviously, as the third guy. We like to always try and make sure.
You know, I mean,
it was good. But
bit of controversy.
I remember we got in the car and I was like, well, that went well. And Stuart literally turned to me, looked me dead in the eyes and went, he's going to quit the band. That's the first thing he said to me. And you know what Stu's like, obviously you know him, and he was just like, he's going to quit the band. And then I just remember, I've told this story on the podcast already, but we're just driving home like, oh my God, we're going to need to find a new drummer, like the whole way. But like, I feel like that was almost like a sort of like the defining moment almost for us really, because it was when we got those mixes back for the second, so we did 2 songs in that session, we got those mixes back, it was like, oh, okay, like, yeah, this is going to be all right. Because, you know, we'd done sort of like two records with Connor. Obviously he'd been part of it since day one, and we were like, fuck, man. And he was obviously renowned for being so tight, and it was like, what are we going to do for finding somebody to fill these boots? And obviously we met Louis, and it's like, he's definitely, obviously he's fucking unreal, but like he's definitely like a bit more of a loose cannon in terms of, I would say, creatively almost. It's like the trade-off between that sort of like that tight.
He has so
not
much.
That he's not
he has
tight,
so much flair.
but it's that flair.
No,
exactly,
he's incredibly tight, but he has this flair. He's such a naturally expressive drummer with dynamics and the way he moves around the kit and stuff. It's like he's a real joy to work with. But again, it's balancing that with, as we spoke about, with the kind of the nature of the genre, where the kind of mechanics of the drum part have to really be completely synced with the guitar part. So if it's doing a kind of breakdown or something, how those things play together is so critical, and it's marrying Louis' style to the kind of nuts and bolts of the genre. And I think that was always the thing. But he's phenomenal. I love working with him.
I feel like we nailed it in the end. Like I feel like going into that third session or the final session for the record, it was definitely like, okay, like I feel like we know what we're doing now. And I think that's kind of coming back to the whole poker face thing. It's like that for me is why it's not so much of a thing anymore, almost, because it's almost like
I bullied it out of you as well.
Yeah, there is a bit of that, you know. I have been pummeled, but like it's like I was almost like everything kind of made sense at that point. There's an element of it where I was a little bit like less afraid to sort of speak my mind, and obviously we've had those moments in the studio. But generally speaking, I feel like the vibe has been really good.
I like to
generally,
think so.
But like obviously in that particular session, it was such a whirlwind in the way that we put it together.
Yeah.
When we finally came out of it, because we have the same conversation every time we work together, where it gets to about a week before. And Toby, I don't know if you do this with Dan, probably not, because you're definitely got your shit together more than I have. Like I'll ring Oz up and be like, "Hey man," and you'll usually walk into Asda, and it's like, "Hey man, yeah, what's up?" And I'm like. Down the phone, like all the songs are shit, everything's terrible, the last record was great, this one sucks. I remember doing it. I remember coming in with Can't Forgive, which for me was like the first sort of grown-up thing we'd kind of done. Like we did a proper video. It was all sort of like narrative based. It wasn't just us sort of throwing down in a warehouse type thing. It was like, you know, we'd really thought about it, spent some money on it. I remember having a big discussion about the production, because that record sonically is quite different to anything we'd done on the first.
Yeah.
It was much more natural drum sound, and it was a real sort of spacey, almost ambient, I guess, kind of feel in comparison to what we'd done. And I remember sitting there being like, dude, I'm just not sure. And every time you just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like shut up, like you idiot. And that's the thing, is I feel like, I've said this to you before, so I think I would struggle at this point to kind of work with anybody else, and I know that's not clearly not discrediting, because I have, and two, there's some banging producers out there who have worked with some amazing people, but it's just something about that relationship almost that it's like it's bigger than
it's that kind of like trust, like for sure. And and I think like some bands kind of, you never know what's going to happen. That could be, like we've always said, that could be right for now, and then another time it could not be right. You could be finding, you want to do new experience and stuff. So you just never know, really.
Hello everybody, it's that time again. TD the Future here. Now, whilst editing the podcast, I had forgotten that the section about to play was coming. During the recording, both Mikey and Oz thought they could hear a synth or a guitar being played. I couldn't hear it. However, rather than cut the whole section out, I thought I'd leave it in for your own amusement. So enjoy. Oh, and P.S. Fuck Asda.
What the fuck is that?
What are we talking about? Like, what is what, Mikey?
Could you hear that?
That music.
I heard nothing.
I heard a guitar or something, for sure.
Oh, I thought it was a little synth part going on. I was quite into it. Thought I was going to get a bit of backing music.
I don't know what the fuck that was. That was mad. I mean, I don't know. We just have to pick this up, I guess, because that was fucking spooky as fuck. I'm glad I'm not the only person who heard it though. I was like,
literally, I've got no. I mean, there's a ghost in the machine. Like you two are on the same wavelength so much that
maybe
you must
that's
be
what it
hearing
is, man.
the same mental
Like,
brain
knows,
noises.
Dude? I mean, yeah, obviously, like working on the City Records and stuff, I'm hoping you've enjoyed in the most part. It was definitely cool. Yeah,
yeah.
Sorry,
no, man.
Oz, you can be honest, Oz. It's fine.
The thing is, like, no, in all seriousness, like the City record for me, I felt really bad about like particularly like the final mixing, mastering stage of that album, because it came around like Christmas sort of time. Somehow always seems to be Christmas sort of time where we're having conversations like that. I remember it was the Hollow Hope EP, and I remember getting a call from you on Christmas Eve. Now this is, if people are listening thinking of, we've heard about Oz working crazy hours and stuff like that, get a fucking load of this, fam, right? I get a call on Christmas Eve being like, hey man, I'm like, yo, what's up? Christmas Eve, how you doing? He's like, yeah, I'm just driving to my parents' house. I'm going to see my nephew. Like, wicked, cool. He's like, yeah, I'll go back and then I'm going to bounce everything down and send it over to you. And I was like, Oz, don't do that, man. I was like, it's Christmas Eve, fam. Like, just like do your thing. It's it's cool.
Like,
It's
have a break,
Christmas
have a
Eve,
Kit
dude.
Kat,
Like
like,
literally,
give yourself
like
a break.
relax, it's
Yeah.
fine. And he was like, no, and I was like, dude, honestly, please, it's Christmas Eve, like do your thing. And I just remember,
I tell you what, I tell you why that is. It's because I wouldn't have been able to enjoy Christmas knowing that you guys didn't have the
Oh,
mixes.
dude, like-
Genuinely, I get a bit weird about things like that.
I
so
mean, it's
I have
not.
to get it, you
It's
know.
definitely the pinnacle of it happening, but it's not the first time that something like that has happened. But I just remember
Yeah.
getting this message, and usually we'll get like a long message and stuff. You know, hey guys, here's the mixes. I've done this, I've done that, and I got a message. I think it was about 11:15 on Christmas Eve, and all it said was "Merry Christmas" with a fucking link to the mixes, and I was just like, he is the fucking most insane but greatest human being, man.
That's it.
Like,
Literally,
honestly.
the best way to sum it up: the Wizard of Oz.
Literally
mate. There
is,
you go.
man.
Father Craggness.
Honestly, it was fucking insane. But I feel like, you know, obviously the process with the low record was not quite as fun. We were having lots of discussions backwards and forwards, but we got there, and we had the low album release show, which was bonkers, sold out, Boston Music Room.
It's awesome, yeah.
And that was the first time I think you'd seen our band live.
Yeah, it was,
and it was
yeah.
just like this really, like almost like it was supposed to happen, because like we were all downstairs having a beer and everything afterwards, and it was just like this really cool kind of like culmination of all of the work that we'd done together kind of happening in that moment. With obviously we had like Harris was there, who's our press agent, and
Yeah.
like Steph,
Yeah.
our digital marketing lady, and all this other stuff. Everyone's there, and like having this thing, and it was just like a really cool kind of like thing. And it's almost like that team is something that we've definitely grown to sort of love over over the years. I guess sort of like thinking about that, sort of tying this up, I guess, is you've worked with a lot of people. You've worked with some really cool bands. I think probably for me, you are definitely falling into the sort of like underrated category, and I know I'm biased,
Well, that's
but
very
I
kind
feel
of
like
you to
it's,
say
you
that,
know,
yeah.
you've worked with some, you know, there's probably bands that people don't know that you've worked with. Obviously you've done
Yeah.
the Rhino stuff, you've worked with bands like Mallory, you've done some stuff for Neck
Yeah.
Deep. It's not just like bands like my band, do you know what I mean? It's like
No, yeah, I've done stuff for, you know, got some weird credits like bands in the, you know, did stuff from people on X Factor winners and all that kind of stuff as well. So, you know, I've like, it's been an awesome journey to kind of work with so many different cool kind of people and cool bands. I love
it's
it. You know.
crazy, man.
Is
I
there
feel like-
is there any band you would love to record?
Oh yeah, so many bands that I'd love to record. I'm always terrible at kind of like coming up with them on the spot, but I think like probably Strung Out would be up there with one of the bands who are this like American techie skate punk band who like
I know Strung Out.
yeah, so like they were like the first band I was like obsessed with when I was like a teenager, because there was like super fast skate punk drums but with like these like metal riffs, and I still kind of think like if the stars aligned in the right way, that probably could be a band I could work with. So that would be a very cool one for me. Oh yes, loads of people. Like I just like working with people that want to think about their music in a different way, I guess, as well. So yeah, I mean, I have no real kind of massive things of like wanting to only work with really established bands.
I mean, it's cool. I mean, I gave you a good 30 seconds there, and you didn't say my band, so I can now adequately be offended.
well,
So,
you know,
I'm only
who
pulling
would
your leg.
who would I do?
I'm pulling your leg.
I would love to work with you guys. I feel like the relationship's pretty established with Dan, so far be it for me to kind of come in and be disrespectful.
He's
to
a
him
bit
and stuff.
he's a bit of a wet blanket. Maybe we'll come to you.
the punishment.
I love
You
him. I
are
love
very
him. I
welcome.
love
You
him.
are very welcome to come to me. I love listening to the whole choir story as well. So we'll see if we can recreate that as well. I don't think
mate,
I'd
no,
be
who knows?
maybe quite as polite with the children though. I think I
Dude.
might be a little bit more screaming.
It was a nightmare, dude. It was a logistical
I could just
nightmare.
imagine.
I've never seen someone so close to like suicide, I suppose is the only way I can really put it. He literally was having
I
a meltdown.
can imagine
I love that
the
dude,
look
but
on
yeah.
your face when she kept saying, "Is that it?" I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah,
that would
that
be
was
very,
brutal,
very
yeah.
different to the way that Dan.
Yeah, one
handled it.
run through, and then she's like, "So is that it? You got it now?" Yeah, that sounded awful.
Yeah, no.
I think,
mean,
like-
I'm gonna have to put my MPAG hat on here and be like, got to think about sort of like what's gonna be the legacy of the Wizard of Oz. You know, we're in the Emerald Tower at the end of days. What's the plaque gonna say, my dude? What do you want to be when you grow up?
When I grow up, I just kind of I think that's the one good thing about well, not the one good thing, the many good things about the time we're in as in music is that I think everything you guys do with our Hollow, with City, and even this podcast is immortalised on the internet. So I think.
Oh Christ!
I mean,
well,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, something to think.
5
about.
episodes
Something
in,
to think about.
and I haven't been arrested, so life is good. We're chilling.
But it's the truth, you know. It's out there for forever, and I think like that's one cool thing about you know, what I do and stuff now is that like, you know, I get to kind of all the records that I've ever worked on and that I've been so proud and happy and thankful to do are kind of out there. So I feel like that's a pretty good legacy in and of itself.
Just to lay it all on the line, man. Lay it all on the line.
Yeah,
well,
it's there.
dude, thank you so much for coming in. I mean, obviously, I could and have talked to you all day, so we need to try and sort of like get a lid on this.
and I mean, even to be fair, we started off on an interesting foot. You know, I can't say that I agree with your stance on the tierage of British supermarkets.
tell you
However,
what.
I can say you're a bloody nice fella.
Oh,
I can say that. There you go.
I tell you what, Toby, next time you're down in Kent, tell me, and I will take you by the hand, lead you up those golden escalators in Asda, and I'll blow your mind. I'll blow your mind with all the fresh produce.
I must say, one last thing. In Toby's defence, it is a particularly good Asda. To be like that one store is a particularly.
It's a very good. It is a Toby. The man speaks the truth.
It's a particularly good
The man
Asda.
speaks the truth.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, that's it. Slowly, now that the it's like it's a good Asda, right? So my Asda maybe is not a good Asda.
That's not what I'm saying.
I have been, but this is what I will say. I have been to more bad Asdas than I've been to bad Tesco's.
I mean,
I can't agree. I
I feel like we're about to open a can of worms here, man. Like, this is not a thing. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole
Look,
again.
it doesn't matter. Whatever your supermarket of choice, at this point in time, we have established ourselves as companions on the great journey of podcast
Absolutely.
life.
Thank you ever so
And
much for
it's fine.
having me on, and it's been awesome to kind of listen to you guys, especially as in these weird times to kind of listen to some kind of like cool and fun conversations with people. So
that's wicked,
keep
man.
up the good work.
I mean, I think it's basically two idiots being put in a room with people that they kind of know and making them sound like idiots as well. So, I mean, I think if that's what you're into, I think we've done quite a good job so far.
absolutely, yeah.
We try and be informative, but we try and be amusing at the same time.
Dude.
Oh, absolutely. No, yeah. Well, I'll be a keen listener anyway.
Amazing.
So thanks ever
Well,
so
you're
much
going to get
for having me.
memed. This is the thing you've got to remember now, that what the part of the agreement is every Monday, that week's episode, the star gets memed.
Awesome.
So, you know,
happening.
Oh, dear.
who knows what you're going to be just yet. We'll find out.
This should be interesting. I mean, I don't want to kind of like put ideas in your head, but if it could be me in an Asda outfit, I wouldn't be mad about it. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, I've got a couple of ideas. We'll have to wait and
I
see.
love
But I mean,
that.
it's the beauty of it is, and I think the favourite bit about the podcast for me is that you don't get to see the meme until it goes out,
Oh,
and that's
good.
better than doing any of this.
good.
It's just the,
I may
it's
make
the,
an
it's the
exception this
exact
time, but
response.
who knows?
I'm not, if that's the case, Mikey, you're not seeing it
Oh,
either.
fuck me. I mean, it has potentially got whatever the next City thing is on the line. I mean, I would quite like to keep this relationship. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Oz, thank you so much for coming in and having a chat with us. We really, really appreciate it.
We really do, man.
Been a pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.
Next week, we are going to be hanging out with somebody that you know very well, actually. Kian Zamani, my boy, here from Behind Blue Eyes. Oz produced that
Absolute
record.
ledge.
If you haven't, but Precursor, go and check that record out. It's awesome.
It
He's
is
going to be
banging.
here next week having a chat with us about all things Behind Blue Eyes and everything else. So, yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
Bye.